Are there any word from Director Lawson? I'm not gonna say no, and I'll be sure.
You been out there, yesterday, yeah. What do you guys think?
What about
We did the little, for you know, downtown one.
Oh, this is a picture.
To have that little fun. We did.
The thing is that we can channel in on.
Yeah. That what you picked up.
All right. That's all.
You all ready?
Off the bed.
Is
Yeah,
Denise
really good.
connected?
She is, she's on,
People think.
out there.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and get this meeting started. Welcome everyone to the Desert Health District. I don't know what I said. You're so selfish.
Started.
Sorry, we're excited too. Welcome everyone to the Desert Health District Board Meeting of May 6th, 2026. We're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order at 4:02. We have roll call.
Director Smith,
Here.
Director Rogers,
Here.
Director Perezville,
Here.
Director Logston, Secretary Delara,
Here.
Vice President Rodriguez,
Here.
President Barraza.
Here. Thank you. If you can please join me for the allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item C, approval of the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 No opposition, the agenda has been approved. Next item is D, public comments. At this time, comments from the audience may be made on items not listed in the agenda that are of public interest and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district. The board has a policy of limiting speakers to no more than 3 minutes. The board cannot take action on items not listed in the agenda. Public input may be offered on agenda items when they come up for discussion and or action. Do you have any public comments?
Any public comments, ladies?
Well, seeing none, we're gonna go ahead and move forward with next item, E, strategic planning workshop. So, you ready?
Yep, we're ready. So today I have most of my team here in person, which is super exciting. Billy could not join us. He had a personal commitment. Regards. So today the objective is to basically finalize our last session together and just really celebrate the work that we engaged in starting about 10 months ago. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to review it and talk a little bit about next steps in the implementation. But really, it's a chance for all of us to take a good look at everything that we created together today and answer any questions. So what we're going to talk about is just review the major components of the strategic plan, the moment that is in front of us, the strategic planning process we engaged in, the community we serve, and what this plan is designed to serve, the strategic plan itself as it is approved today, how we will measure the impact and the progress of that strategic plan, the financial strategy that supports it, and then, like I said, lastly, implementation and next steps. We will go through it, but if you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to jump in at any point. That is completely fine. So, when we talk about what we came here to do together, it is really to build on the 75 years of commitment that you've had to this community of providing healthcare. And, for the last 75 years, you've served the Coachella Valley residents. You've built an enormous amount of trust. You've delivered a lot of services. And with the new tenant lease, you should have an opportunity to take that to the next level, basically, right? To expand on that in a way that has never been possible in the past, which is a huge opportunity and a huge responsibility. And an opportunity to serve the more than 440,000 residents that serve in a different way, right? So we really wanted to co-design a plan that responded to that opportunity in a way that's innovative and resilient. And most importantly, that answers the moment today for the next 5 years, but also sets up the organization for success in the long term. And that's what we've been balancing as we've gone through this process over the last 10 months. So I think that's another thing that's really important to reinforce. What we try to do, as we've said from the beginning, is align the community needs that are present in the community and really look at the resources that we have. So the increased funding, obviously, but also the other things that we can influence, like the convening power that the organization has, the way that we can maybe improve the infrastructure of the way the healthcare is delivered, how we can use data to be much more accountable for the way we approach things, and how we can learn and improve over time in a much more nimble way than has been possible in the past to really create the maximum impact. So this is really the foundation of this strategic plan, right? Is finding that connection. And that's what we've been doing the last 10 months together. One of the key aspects that has come out of this strategic planning process is this idea that we can move from being just a grant-making organization to becoming a health system amplifier. So what do we mean by that? Leah, can we get to the next slide? Thank you. So that means that we have the opportunity to really set some priorities and directions for the community as a whole. It means that we can use our influence to convene and connect partners to create more impact than we would be able to do just on our own. Right? It's a new role, it's a new responsibility. We can align ourselves with the broader system, and we can also really, really use data inside the organization and outside of the organization to create more insights, like I said, so we can learn and improve along the next 5 years, but hold ourselves accountable, right? Because there's a huge responsibility to the community with this increased influx of funding. We can obviously drive access and innovation and greater results than we could by just being grant makers. And we've talked a lot about that, but building shared infrastructure is another thing we could do, right, with the real estate opportunity. So I think that this is, it's important to know that this is also going to have ramifications for the organization itself, right? We need to grow as an organization. In order to be a health system amplifier in the community, we have to behave that way internally. So that means that the way these pillars are implemented by the staff has to have a very, very strong collaboration and cross-sectional efforts as a key part of this, right? It's not going to happen overnight. We've said that many, many times. It's not going to happen overnight. So the strategic plan that we all landed on is really a response to the opportunity that we have and this opportunity to become a health system amplifier in the future. I'm going to let Leah take you through the process.
Great. So now that we've anchored ourselves in our moment, which I think is just a reminder of everything we've come to over the last 10 months, we'll review the strategic process, which everyone has been instrumental in. So the approach that we took, we engaged in a discovery phase that lasted a few months, which resulted in a discovery report with our key recommendations on what to consider for the next strategic plan and how the organization can be best prepared and equipped to deliver on that strategic plan. We then did a phase 1 of strategic planning where we looked a lot at the previous strategic plan, considered what we could carry over, and also assessed all of the data that we have to inform what needs to be included. We then had a 2-month community engagement process, which resulted in 7 in-person sessions, 1 virtual session, and a community survey that reached over 200 residents. And that really helped us to validate what we already had and also get feedback and ideas on what to include and what to prioritize. We then transitioned into strategic planning phase 2, where we refined what we had based on that community input and based on your input to come at the strategic plan that we landed on. And we've already approved, and we'll show you in a couple of slides. And then here we are in May at the presentation and delivery and closing out the chapter of the strategic planning process. And then we'll touch on this later as well, but we will also likely be here for implementation support beginning in June, because this plan is only as useful as its ability to be adopted and implemented. And so that's going to be a huge component and involve many different interdisciplinary sub-projects. So what we aim to do together, this slide should be very familiar to everyone now, but there were really 3 guiding principles that we kept throughout this process of creating a 5-year strategy toward health equity. So the first one is that it must be community-centric. So the community voice must be integral to the process and anchored in everything that we do and present. And we need to represent the current and the future voices and acknowledge all of the trends and needs of the district's diverse and complex communities. The next one is that it's financially viable. And Sophie touched on this. We know that there's a huge opportunity with the tenant lease to create impact that has not yet been seen by this organization. And that also comes with a responsibility and good financial stewardship. And that's something that we've anchored throughout this process, and we've discussed different ways to be financially sustainable. And the third one, of course, is that we must make tangible impact. If we put our dollars towards projects that don't actually help the community, we can consider those dollars wasted. We want to make sure that all of our investments actually lead to impact in the community. And data is going to be a huge component in this as well. Okay, the strategic process, we've touched on this. We have our guiding principles. And then what actually went into creating our strategic plan? So we talked about community engagement, talked about the discovery report, all of the local, regional, and health data and reports. So that's the HARC 2025, the Community Health Needs Assessment, the Huron report, the CVP report, US Census data, trends, what we know has been happening politically with immigration enforcement, as well as the Big Beautiful Bill. So those are all elements that we looked at when considering the strategic plan. We had, I think, over a dozen work sessions between the board and staff, which is incredible. And that was a huge opportunity to advance on each of the steps and components of this process. We consulted the Association of Healthcare Districts to understand what other healthcare districts are doing well and what's working. We worked with Jeff, the legal counsel, to ensure that everything we were doing and proposing was within the legal guardrails of the organization. And then we engaged in a few asynchronous exercises. So we did a prioritization Moscow exercise on your previous strategic plan. And we also had you evaluate all of the initiatives to ensure that they were truly pushing forward what we were looking to do. And I'll pass it over to Angelica to touch on the community.
Thank you so much. So when we think about the conversations that we had as it relates to community engagement, I really want us to take a step back and consider the fact that we accomplished something that was so much bigger than what we had expected. There were at least 20 people in almost every room that we sat in across the 7 zones. We had at least 65 people who sat on the virtual Zoom with us. We traveled back and forth for a month and a half to connect with all of you in this room and across the communities that we connected with. And thank you again to the staff and the board members for supporting us as we were leading these conversations. When we talk about the survey that was implemented and the response that we gained was absolutely phenomenal. And across the board, there was this sentiment in talking about the potential of the district and the work that can be brought out of this process and the strategic plan. And majority of the people overwhelmingly shared they were so excited that you all were going through this process, and how strategic and intentional we were about including them as a part of that discussion. And then really thinking about how do we support this work as time goes on. And I also don't want us to overlook the fact that we published a 39-page community engagement report that's out in the world that includes all of the feedback that we heard across those 7 zones. Let's take us to the next slide, please. And within the feedback that was shared with us, there was 5 key commonalities that we heard. First thing talks about the current health systems are not meeting the community needs across the Coachella Valley. And we know that that's not specific to the Coachella Valley. We know that that's a problem across the country. And so that is at the top of the list as a key thing that we can do, being in this room and continuing to work as it relates to the strategic plan. The next feedback that we heard was focusing on the workforce shortages and how there's a system-wide barrier to access consistently and high quality care. We don't want people to just have access to care. We want people to have access to high quality care, care that actually aligns with who they want to connect with, people who are empathetic to their needs, understanding the cultural nuances of their experiences. Third, we also heard this conversation around awareness and navigation and access to gap prevention and residents from fully benefiting from the existing systems that are in place. When it comes to getting people access, it isn't enough just to create access. You have to have the ability to navigate the systems that are available to you. And when people also don't know what's available to them, then another barrier is created because they'll say, oh, we don't have these particular programs, but there are 5 programs in their community. So we want to be able to increase the ability to know what's available to you and then navigate systems. Fourth, as you all know very well, I love talking about social determinants of health in the context in which we engage the community before they even get to the doctor and when they leave the doctor's office. What are the factors that impact their overall health? Can they, do they have access to equitable pay? Do they have the ability to pay their bills? Do they have the ability to have a roof over their head? Housing was a big part of the discussion that we had in every single zone and even virtually. And then last but not least, we talked about better coordination as it relates to data sharing, collaboration across all organizations, and the need to reduce those silos, the fragmentations to improve collective impact. Also, we know that there's a lot of people who are doing some amazing work across the Coachella Valley, but sometimes people don't even know what their neighbor is doing. So it's important to really galvanize the power to convene people so people know how to connect and collaborate. In every single zone, there were people who were meeting new people that had never met before and learning about programs they had never heard about. And so we've already started the work to really amplify this 5th key point. Okay, we're going to pause a little bit when it comes to community. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Leah.
All right, so our final fiscal year 2027 to 2031 strategic plan. So we'll start at the very top. I hope one thing that you learned with us is we love the building blocks, and we made sure that intentionally throughout this project, we really started from the true north of the organization and then slowly worked our way down to the very tactics that will make this strategic plan possible. So we engaged in a work session to refine the vision and the mission of the organization. So the vision that we landed on that will guide this strategic plan is to achieve optimal health at all stages of life for all district residents. The mission is to improve health access and outcomes for all district residents through strategic funding and partnership building to advance resilient communities. So those are results of the staff and the board coming together and really word crafting and making sure that this is representative of what the organization stands for. The values carry over from what you already had. So it's 2-pronged. It's first, we believe every resident in our district deserves access to health education, disease prevention, and comprehensive diagnostic and treatment services, all of which is embedded throughout the goals and initiatives that we selected, and the opportunity to participate in District Matters through access and input to the board, which is something that the organization has always done and was also created through the community engagement sessions. The second part of the values is that we support positive health system change via incorporating best practice methodologies where possible, encouraging accurate outcome measurement by benchmarking, monitoring, and evaluation. This is huge and part of that 4th data-driven pillar. Supporting innovative new practices and programs, and fostering collaboration and partnerships. Again, core to the work that we're going to do. So the next component, the next building block after the true north is the actual strategic pillars. So there's 4 core strategic pillars that we landed on. Workforce development, which is about increasing the workforce. Awareness and access, which is about increasing awareness of the available services and resources and increasing access to those services. Engagement, which is all about the social determinants of health. And then data-driven, which is about making the organization a data mature organization that can make smart decisions based on data and create collective impact across the region. So important to note too, that we all agreed that those first 2 pillars, workforce development and awareness and access, are going to be very funding focused. That's where a lot of the grant making will center. Engagement is going to rely really heavily on partnerships and collaboration across the Valley. And data-driven has 2 different components to it. We have the internal side, which is making sure that the organization is equipped to deliver on the strategic plan and that it can build its capacity to make data-driven decisions. And then once we have increased that internal capacity, we'll have the resources and the knowledge and information to help other organizations in the Coachella Valley do the same and create, again, collective impact, which I think is a theme that we've come back to multiple times. I won't go through these in detail. I think everyone's very familiar with these, and we voted on the pillars, the goals, and the initiatives. But we know that workforce development, again, it's 2-sided. We have recruitment and retention, and within that, we're really focused on building up the local pipeline. We heard that there's a lot of individuals in the Valley who are interested in pursuing these careers, and we know that people who are from the Valley are more likely to stay and have cultural competency. We also want to make it easier for these providers to live in the Valley. So whether that's providing stipends or incentives for them to come and stipends and incentives for them to stay. And then there's also the support aspect, which is making sure that they have professional development opportunities, that there are peer groups, and that they have available resources when things get tough. Pillar 2, awareness and access. With the awareness piece, it's really lifting up the role of promotoras and community health navigators and how instrumental they are in helping people understand what's available to them and where these services live in the Coachella Valley. On the access piece, we've talked a lot about real estate and the role that the district can play in procuring new health centers to facilitate access to care for residents. And then we also know how successful these non-traditional delivery programs can be, such as the mobile health clinics. And then we know there's an ever-growing role of digital access and how that can also help close gaps for certain residents who live far from where care is. The third one is engagement. And this, we all decided that the framework that would be guiding us was the Healthy People 2030. And within that, we chose 3 core tenets. So the neighborhood and built environment, the social and community context, and economic stability to drive our partnerships. And that's where we'll focus our efforts. And within that, we carried over from the past strategic plan, the environmental health and climate resilience, as well as healthy housing and stability. We also introduced components around policy alignment because the district has a relatively newly formed legislative committee, and nutrition for health. We talked a lot about medicinal nutrition and the local organizations that play a vital role in providing food access to residents. And then finally, this was the most novel component. I don't think there's ever been anything data related in a district strategic plan. And this centers on internally, how do we become a data mature organization that has the capacity to deliver on this plan? And then how do we share that knowledge out with different organizations, reduce silos and fragmentation to create collective impact in the Valley? And that's all in terms of our strategic plan. Pass it over to Ori to summarize the impact measurement that we did when we last saw you.
Yeah, so real quick on this, you've heard us say this before, data is a means. It's not an end. But I think what we've been able to do in the 10 months of working with you is really create a mind shift within the organization. And that's thanks to the staff the board and the leadership and collaboration between the two. I think that for the first time, we've always been committed as an organization to measuring success. But the switch that we have seen is to transition from measuring success based on what we are funding to what happens with that funding. And that is a really fundamental change that not all organizations make. And it's a hard change to make because it's much more difficult, much more challenging to measure and assess and improve the latter than it is the former, right? And that's the shift that we are making. I believe that it's an investment. It's an investment in the organization. It's an investment in the community, and it's an investment in the true north that we aim to serve as an organization. We now have a structure, an impact measurement framework that aligns to the pillars that Leah described earlier. It allows us to separate between what we want to measure to understand activities and impact. It divides into primary, secondary, and tertiary metrics. It divides into leading and lagging indicators. That is all to say it's a lot more sophisticated than what we had in the past, where we were looking at a few things, but now we have an approach that we can take and use on a regular basis. And finally, it allows us to transition from a place of we are measuring things because we feel like we need to for compliance and those types of things to a real decision-making tool that allows us to do two very critical things. And again, data always has the external lens and the internal. From an external perspective, it's to speak to the things and the impact that actually matters to our partners, to our stakeholders, most importantly to the community. And from an internal perspective, it's to actually understand whether what we are doing aligns to the things and the results that we want to see and identify where we can improve and make smarter or decisive choices with intentionality. As mentioned, and this should look familiar, we have landed on a really, really strong infrastructure. It is not complete. We still need to go through the process of defining what specific metrics are for specific activities. That is all in the implementation phase, and we're set up to do that. But now, for the first time, we have a really strong understanding of how we want to approach it, the structure and the mechanism to do that. That will serve us in the long term. A very small group of very focused and powerful primary metrics. These are the things that we're going to say on the big stages to demonstrate the impact of our organization. Behind that, a slightly wider set of secondary impact metrics that help us understand whether we are reaching our goals at the initiative level, at the activities. And then behind that, activity metrics which help us understand whether we are using our resources correctly, where there's room for optimization, where there's room for new partnerships and innovation. And then finally, what we wanted to share with you here is just some examples of some of the metrics that we've started thinking about. Again, none of these are final. There's an entire process that we will work with you to refine these, to sharpen these, to get your collective perspectives on. We probably want to get some additional perspective, but just as examples, right? The types of things that we are seeing based on what we have learned from the community, what we've heard in this room, what we've heard through the partnership conversations, the types of ways in which we want to talk about our successes, right? So in workforce development, it's things like the percentage of identified high-need roles filled and retained within the next 3 years, right? It's far more specific ways of measuring the progress and the impact that we can make. In awareness, the percentage of the population that is actually able to access the needed care with clinically appropriate timeframes, right? Those are the metrics that actually matter to the community. In engagement, percentage of population served in specific programs. We want to understand our reach and which programs are reaching which communities, and there may be differentiations between those things, right? We want to be able to dive into these things. Angelica earlier talked about social determinants of health, so we want to dive deeper into that. Composites of housing, safety, economic stability, all of these things are critical for us to be able to talk about the impact of our work in ways that actually matter to the people that we want to serve, rather than tell them about how much money we've dedicated to this initiative or that initiative, right? We want to be able to do both. But the former is absolutely critical. Without that, we are not fulfilling on our true north, our mission, and our obligations. And then finally, data-driven, again, two angles to this, but percentage of staff who are using data tools and dashboards. This may seem small. It's not. We meet organizations every day who adopt a lot of data tools and processes, or have a lot of data tools and processes, and do a very poor job of actually adopting them into their modus operandi, whether it's from a tactical perspective or a strategic perspective. We want to establish a strong infrastructure that will carry through and honestly change the culture, change the data culture within the organization and outside of it. Right? The convening component, how we enable data-driven decision-making for our partners, sometimes for our grantees, right? They are thirsty for these types of skill sets, capabilities, and we have the opportunity to answer that.
Good to go? To keep moving? Any questions? Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna fill in. Okay, so I'm gonna fill in for Billy. So the last time we met, actually, as a group, we talked about financial sustainability. And as you know, we completed a very phased, customized, and multidimensional analysis of the district's financial sustainability opportunities, the assets, the risk, the constraints, and the key findings that we all know and that we need to keep in mind as we bring this strategic plan to life is that all the tax-derived funds fall under the same compliance requirements. That's very important. For the next 30 years, the lease revenue will be the basis of the grant making and the reserves allocation. But after 30 years, the tax revenues will play a significant role again. So again, managing that influx and the changing inputs. The board has as we know, and understandably, a very diverse array of perspectives of how to use the first $100,000, $100 million. Sorry, yeah, $100 million. That would be really upsetting if I just said to you, actually, we decided only 100,000. But I think what we want to remind everybody is with the financial interactive model that Billy built, right? We found a way of having these discussions together and moving the process along by saying there are 1,000 variables you could include in this model, and every single one has an impact both in the short term and the long term. And really what we're hoping is that that discussion keeps happening, right? We need to really understand that there are a lot of assumptions that go into it. It's okay. And I hope that we helped you start that conversation and be comfortable with that conversation was really the objective with that. So in terms of the next immediate steps, right, you need to establish a starting point for the budget, which I think Chris obviously is leading in May.
Eric.
And Eric. So that is definitely. And then to continue that conversation about how to reach consensus on how to use that first payment, right? Balancing the immediate needs with the long-term needs and the expectations of the community, which you all serve. And what is good for the organization. Because let's not forget that we've said this many times, and this is part of doing the due diligence of doing a strategic plan. You're taking care of your organization. It's like a mother. Take care of the mother so that she can help her children. If the organization is not healthy and is not taken care of and isn't strong, it can't deliver the impact that it needs to. So that's the other balance, right? So it's like short term and long term. There's many different ways we can look at this in terms of spending it now and having a reserve to be financially responsible. And also, how do we help the organization grow so that it can continue to serve in the long run in a more sophisticated way? So as we said, the ongoing steps is to continually pressure test the assumptions that are underlying the financial model and use it as the starting point for key decisions, right? And to regularly update the model as more information comes available, right? We need to look at the sustainability lens at the organizational level, like I just said, and the grant making level, right? Those are the two things you need to really think about. And we didn't really get into this as much, but it's in the report. But at the grant making level, there is a full continuum of capital that is available, right? And it is not just grant making. It is about building those partnerships and investing in different investment opportunities. So those things also need to be balanced. We did not include the financial model here, but it is something that's provided as part of the delivery package, which you can imagine is quite big. Okay. Okay, so I think everybody's pretty happy with where we landed. We have a strategic plan. We have an impact measurement. We have a financial plan that says whether it's not, it's good. So really now it's what do we do to implement it? Because that's the next big thing. So here's our recommendation. Let's start with where we always start, which is guiding principles. How do we come to these recommendations? This plan, as I just said, is going to result in significant organizational and governance shifts. The organization has to adapt. So that means that the implementation process has to be phased. It has to, in order to maximize the success, we can't do everything at once, even though there's going to be a lot of energy towards that. And it's very exciting, right? The new influx of money, the fact that this process is completed from inside the organization, outside the organization, people will be like, okay, let's go. And which is great. And that energy should be harnessed, though, so that we can position ourselves in the best possible way. What that means in very short term is always practice be proactive versus reactive from the start. Right? Instead of just somebody saying, hey, how about that? And we all go, yes, maybe. Like, let's just set ourselves up so that we can be proactively seeking out opportunities and proactively setting ourselves up for success. And that takes a little bit of patience. It's not easy, but that's what we would recommend. So year one should really be focused on this, we call it a piloting, phase. We are piloting this new strategic plan so that we can set ourselves up for success, start getting the data flow to go in so we can learn and optimize, right? We should never sit on our laurels and just say, this is what we're going to do for the next 5 years. Just by default, the context is going to change. A year from now, who knows? Who knows where we're going to be a year from now? And the other thing is obviously aligning the organization's capacities with a new strategy to mirror it so that we can implement it in the best way is going to really help us serve the community at our highest potential. So in terms of a phased approach, I'm sorry, this is hard to, but we will also provide this. But you'll see that basically there's a foundation phase. So that's exactly what I just talked about. Co-designing the communication plan. How do we communicate this to the community? And it's not just on July 1st. I mean, we like to do things a little bit ahead of time. So we've already started talking about that. Like, it can't just be one announcement. It's like, how is it built up to the time where grant making is reopened so the community feels not only excited, but they're informed, so they know what their organization is doing. They know how they can participate, and they know why it'll be successful, right? And they know that we are, confident in our stance, right? So that's the first thing, co-designing and launching a communication plan for the community, for all of the stakeholders, defining the role in governance and the organizational structure. The work that you're doing with Larry Walker has to keep going. We need to then, fill in the roles that are needed in this new organization in order to deliver on these pillars, So that means developing the job descriptions, hiring strategies, where everybody's going to live. Can we all fit in the same space? It's details like that. Continuing to define the roles of the foundation and the district and where they can support each other and where they can align and where they have different roles. So that would be foundation 0 to 6. And that's an aggressive timeline. Okay, that might be 0 to 12, but this is what we would like to do in 0 to 6. And then the 7 to 12 months is really the activation, right? So that's much more about, learning about the grant making process and how we can improve that and designing, the technology that needs to support the pillars that we're talking about. It's about creating, the impact measurement framework and starting to implement it, because it's more detailed. And then we go into acceleration and optimization, 2 years, 2, 3, and 3, 5. I won't even go down there because I think it's just too much for everybody. We have started to work with Chris and the team in the last 2 weeks about how Selwyn can help support that implementation. We're very honored and thankful that you would think of us to do that. And so we've shared with Chris, I think we're now 6 work streams where we can support different aspects of this implementation plan. Acknowledging that we can't do everything. So we've only, you'll see that it's very data-driven and very organizational change management driven, because that's where our strengths lie.
And we've been working on finalizing that, which we should tomorrow, few weeks possibly.
Yeah.
And then we'll be including that in the Finance and Administration committee packet that will be published tomorrow for next Tuesday's meeting.
So I want to conclude by just saying, first of all, I commend you for all of the work that you have all done together. But it is really important, I think I've said this before, really important to know that this is just the starting point. And a strategy that sits on a shelf is the worst possible outcome of a project like this, where so many people have worked so hard and everybody's voices has been incorporated. So the strategic plan now really needs to be a living plan so that every time a decision is made, we have to go back to that strategic plan. Remember all of the work, all of the hours that we put into it to come to these decisions, and say, does this drive towards our goal that we've all committed to and committed to the community to? Because that's what we're going to be held accountable to. So it is absolutely a living document that should be referred to all the time. And we're really excited to start implementing it. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And that's it. I think we're already early. So I just talked something. Oh, I should say, there is a whole bunch of items for you. You have the report, obviously the final report. You have the community report. You have the discovery report. We have elements for the marketing campaign. We have the financial model. So you have that as a package as well, but we didn't want to.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Of course, thank you for all the work that you've done the past 8-9 months.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. So we're gonna go ahead and open up for comments, questions. I'll start with my right.
Yeah, first of all, comments, incredible report, one of the best strategic plan reports I've seen. So, and then just the commitment from the whole team. So I really appreciate it, not just you from Stone, but also staff as well, the amount of work that you've done. I 100% agree with you on the constant need to inform the community about the implementation and especially the metrics and stuff as we go through the next 5 years. I'd really encourage us to do, though, a major launch event in July. Let a UCR type thing, media coverage and all that. I think it's really important. Not only the amount of money that we've put into this endeavor, but really how this is really changing the role of the district. I think that will really set up expectations for the community, not just the residents we serve, but also the people that we fund, and then the partners that we'll be dealing with. So it's just an encouragement to staff. We take that on board or not. But question would be the role of the strategic planning committee in this. Really hasn't been active. We've been doing this as a board, but I think they can play a really vital role in the implementation process. I know a lot of that will rely on staff. And then obviously if someone is involved as well, but I think to have some board perspective through that committee would be very beneficial. And my fellow directors can push back at any time. And then my final thing for now anyway is I noticed that the partnership, enhancing the partnership was more in the third phase of implementation. I'd encourage some of the identifying and building of partnerships, not in the 0 to 6, but maybe the 7 to 12 month.
Absolutely.
Just because I think that's going to frame a lot of, especially as we get into what we'll be funding or figuring out the tactics of how we'll fund certain things, is at least having some of those partnerships identified and, what development do we need to do with them to take some of the financial burden off the district.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's all I had. Other than that, it's very, very impressive. So
Thank you so much.
I just-
Yes, go ahead.
But I want to double click on one of the points that you made. I'm not the communication and marketing expert. We have people who have way more experience in that than I have. But, one of our goals in this project was to have the organization be a thought leader and an innovator in the space. So, we have great relationships with the ACHD. that could be something that we leverage as well as a part of any kind of campaign to talk about how what we're doing here is different, innovative, advanced, sophisticated.
And ACHD does they've been really following us closely, and so in their reports on that, they're typically highlighting the work that we're doing, you know, the grant funding, you know, any kind of projects that we're doing. So that's being seen by the other healthcare districts and those that receive that reporting. So
Director Pelosi?
I just want to thank Sloan for helping us get through this process, and I'm very excited to implement it in our community.
Director Lara?
Okay, so again, I echo the statements that my fellow board members have said, that I can't believe that 10 months have really elapsed since we first chose you to take this. And you said, you used the word that you were honored to be part of this. I just want you to know that it's not about the flowers and the awards, but it's about the real work. You're on the hook. To make sure that you keep us on track, because this is a major work that we're going, and that's why we asked, you know, at the previous meeting, you know, is this something that we could continue to have you involved, especially in the early stages? So that's, I just want you to know that you're in it just like we are, so.
No, 100%, 100%.
We're already daydreaming about the next things.
Because.
And that's the fun part, you know, I mean, honestly.
Well, this is the work that you're good at, and we understand we have really talented staff to be able to take the instructions and be able to, you know, to implement, but we really do need that expertise to be able to get off to a good start and keep on that right road. And what we're trying to do here is something that's very major, to be able to reestablish our priorities and to become the premier health system that so many of us have always envisioned that the district has been or should be. So I agree with Director Rodriguez about making sure that we get the word out. And one of the ways that I hope that we're able to do that, I know that we do a lot of very strategic sponsoring of events. But I think we need to do that in the future, because not everybody will actually go to our website and look at it. We have to take the message to them.
Absolutely.
So looking at how we can be strategic and being able to, you know, some of the successful ways that organizations carry the message, you know, at recent chambers where they do the 2-minute thing, Colors of the Desert does their PR, you know, at events where people go, you know, so being able to make sure that we are taking the information to different areas and different populations. I hope that we'll be able to ensure that we have annual check-ins that, you know, just besides the rolling out celebration or, but also doing how did we do in the first year and what, you know, where are we going and how do we course correct? So I'm hoping that will be something that is as public on a yearly basis, you know, moving forward. So thank you again for and also I want to thank the board members. I think that the questions and of trying to incorporate all of the ideas that all of you have done, I think it has really given you the insight that you needed to know what was important to us. So thank you.
To my left, any comments, questions?
Go ahead, you start.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm very impressed. I've been through many planning processes like this, and I see that this gives us a very good vision and step forward. I'm quoting a former board member, Kay Hazen, and her favorite saying, well, I see the what, but what's the how? And, you know, that's sort of what I'm focusing on. I know that we have a lot of challenges ahead as a healthcare district, especially in terms of what's coming down nationally for our healthcare system. I just shared an article about hospitals in California, rural hospitals facing closure because the lack of funding for their population. I also know that the initiative process, that this organization has used in the past. It's been very successful. Sometimes, if we've had like a homeless initiative and other kinds of initiatives and the nonprofit organizations in the Valley come to us with some very creative, progressive ideas. So, I'm looking forward to working with communities and facilitating that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would just comment and kind of echoing what everybody said here. I mean, it's been a really good process. You guys, being a part of this strategic plan for a board that is relatively new working together. I think that has been such a good point for us is to really connect through an agent like you to really allow us to speak about what we've been thinking about and really put all those ideas into a good plan. And I'm hoping this is just the start of us working. It's not just the idea phase, but we move it into an actual implementation phase together.
And so on my end, one of the things that I want to highlight, and I think I knew that we would come up with a good strategic plan, and because I think we're very focused and aligned with what the need of the community is. And so I'm pretty excited about the implementation portion of it. And so as I was reading the report, on the report, what really caught my attention was that it says the plan has to stay actionable, accountable, and responsive. And I think that's key, right, to any strategic plan. And I mean, within these three words, right, we need to be just actionable, accountable, and responsive. There's flexibility within those words, right? Also knowing that, hey, if we might need to change something within our first, as we're reaching our first, our benchmarks, right? The timeframes, the timing, and how we're going to be rolling this out. So I think even just reading that and knowing that there's a possibility and quick possibility that you'll stay on and help us with the implementation, I think it's even better, right? I'm even more excited because oftentimes plans fail within the implementation phase, or it really does not align, right? You work on this plan and then the implementation comes and it's well, we don't know what to do with what we just came up with, right? And so knowing that we'll continue the work, I'm really happy to hear that. And so again, I thank you for the time that you spend with our communities, for meeting our communities on the ground, right? For your accessibility and also your patience, right? With the board, with staff. We got really good work in front of us, and I'm happy that we'll continue on. Also, I do want to thank the staff as well for all your work as we develop this. Director, any comments, questions?
Yes, just briefly, I want to echo what pretty much all of you said, that this is really phenomenal work. Even though I only kind of jumped in here in January, this entire process, this collaboration, I've learned so much from it. And I was particularly impressed, I will say, by the community forums and how those were conducted, how you all continue to have so much energy flying back and forth and flying back and forth was kind of amazing, because by the end I was like, ooh, I'm tired, and I'm just driving down the street. So it was a really good experience, and I want to thank you all for that. And I think we all appreciate here what we're trying to do, right? We want to become, I think, Letty, you were saying this, the premier health system, right? We're going to be this health system amplifier, this initiative that we're starting. And so I believe that, in this report, everything we have, it seems that we really do have the tools, and we have the way to go about it. We have a path forward. And so I'm very much looking forward to continue to work alongside you all, just to kind of, flesh out some of these ideas more, really get into the tactics and a lot of the things that we spent so many months putting together and determining what, those priorities will be as far as in the stages of implementation, and things along those lines really is what I was thinking about as I was reading through the report. But again, thank you so much. And also thank you to staff. This was an amazing process, and even then we're still getting started. So thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
Not online. Public comment.
All righty. So I believe that we might be ready to adjourn this meeting unless there's other.
Do we make a motion to adopt?
I think the plan would be to actually bring the action item to the next board meeting.
Okay.
This was just a review and have the discussion, and then we'll do the action item to adopt or the strategic plan on May 26th.
Won't be there.
All
I
right.
vote yes. when-
Right. Well, with that said, thank you. We appreciate everyone's time.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bravo.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Nancy. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Tomorrow.